This year has been a difficult one for all of us. The coronavirus pandemic has affected everybody's life. Plans have been turned upside down, and far too many families are having to deal with the loss of a loved one. My thoughts are with every single one of you. The pandemic has taken another turn for the worse. A new, highly infectious strain of the virus has been identified. It's here in Wales and it's spreading quickly. We have had to make some tough decisions and ask everyone to once again stay at home and save lives. The situation in Wales is very serious. This is not the way we hope to spend Christmas. For many families who won't be able to see each other this year, this will seem incredibly difficult. Right across the country, difficult phone calls are being made. There will be sadness, but it is the right thing to do. This is a cruel virus. It challenges every one of us because it thrives on our normal human behaviour. Together, we have endured so much this year. But throughout this year, our generosity, kindness and community spirit has shone through. This Christmas, more than any other, let's reach out to those we know are alone or bereaved or worried about the future. I want to say a few words of thanks to our critical workers, to our incredible NHS, our carers, shop workers, and the many, many others who have worked so hard this year and done so much to keep this country moving throughout the pandemic. They will once again this Christmas shoulder the responsibility as the majority stay home. I know things look bleak at the moment, but there is hope. More people are being vaccinated every day, and we hope there's another vaccine around the corner. Please stay safe, take care of one another, and have a peaceful Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Well, we had the original first lockdown, and we had to close because there's the regulations at the time anyway. So we remained closed till September, and then we reopened again, and we remained open right up until Christmas. Basically, we were starting our Christmas services, and we cancelled them again because we had the fire break, and then we came back after the fire break, and then in December we had to just cancel the services. So we had no services over Christmas, which was a bit strange. It's obviously a central time of year for Christians, and so no midnight Holy Communion or Christmas Day service. Then we remained closed until Easter Sunday.
It was odd because obviously I work for Welsh Water in the visitor centre, and so it was a very strange time because on the 20th of December we had to shut, and we didn't really see it coming because it was just literally done. It was the announcement was just the night before, by midnight tonight, the whole of Wales is in lockdown, and so it was a really odd day on the 20th of December to literally have to go in and close up. And the message I don't know had got round to visitors, so there were still people turning up wanting to come into our car parks, didn't really understand. There was a bit of aggravation at some point between some of our visitors and the staff as we were trying to close up, and we just shut everything down. We turned all the heating off, we turned all the lights off, we turned a lot of the freezers and the fridges off in the cafe, and that was it. And we've only just this weekend, so from the 27th of March, been able to start having a phased reopening, which really is just we've opened our car parks, that's it.
So I spent Christmas as I would normally do at home. But this Christmas was very, very different because I didn't have any of my family around me. And that's the first time I've not had anyone apart from my husband at Christmas. So I had decorated the house up to the hills, up
Mm.
to the hill. It looked like a tart's boudoir, and it felt a little bit hollow because there wasn't anyone else but me to enjoy it. I was glad I'd done it, but it did feel a really slightly sad occasion.
Mm.
Also, slightly relieved that I didn't have to sing the Christmas pudding in.
Well, it was just me here in the house with the cat. Yes, I was lucky. I had my great nieces did a musical rendition on their violin and things, and that was, I'd had that through video, not through Zoom, so that was quite nice. And
I am I have very conflicted ideas about Christmas. So I can be very bar humbug about it, and usually have sort of quite a low key Christmas. And also I could sort of see what was going to happen this year. And so I had decided to myself, right, I'm not going to put any Christmas decorations up at all. I'm not going to have Christmas dinner all on my own, because, you know, there is no point in cooking a turkey just for one person. So I decided already that I was just going to do something that made me feel happy at just being on my own.
Christmas.
We spent Christmas at home, so we didn't see anybody. It was just us two. We have, Jill's parents are in Wiltshire, and so they were in tier 2, so we could only go and visit their garden. So we couldn't go and really see them. So my parents are also in Raider, and I couldn't really go and see them either because we went into lockdown from the 20th of December. So it was just us two, and so we did quite a lot of video calls and phone calls, and that was it really.
this was a very strange Christmas, though, this one. It was a bit like being a prisoner, Stay there and you will eat this and you do that. No, I'm quite happy to obey by all the rules, but it was very strange. And I wasn't the only one. I mean, nearly all my neighbours here live on their own. So I wasn't the only one. Because at other Christmases, that's what's happened. Another neighbour in between, she has invited me over there with her husband and one or two of the other neighbours, and we've had Christmas dinner together that way. Yeah, I forget that. No, we just had to wave from the doors. We phoned each other and we waved through the windows. We hadn't done so. And my one neighbour, her husband had a shield. He's not very healthy, so we couldn't risk anything. It's not worth taking the risk, you know. I know the youngsters don't care, and I mean, my granddaughter probably doesn't care. She cares about us, but I mean, they don't care about themselves. They don't think.
They feel safe, don't they?
Well, we were all locked down really, but you know, we got the phone, so, you know, phoning parishioners pretty regularly, and email those who do email. We find about 50% do technology and 50% kind of, you know, they're on the phone, obviously, because that's quite an old technology now, but in terms of internet, it's about half and half, which has been hard to keep in touch with those without the internet, other than the phone. Yeah, and to you know, we've recorded services through the lockdown, which we put on YouTube and Facebook, and yeah. But those people who don't have a computer or don't do internet, you know, if they can't access them, can they? So, yeah.
I used to always see Owen. He used to come and see us, but at the moment, Phoebe always comes. But of course, since the lockdown, we just see each other on the phone. on my WhatsApp or something. Yeah. Or we talk a lot. I'm good at talking. I do meet, Phoebe does come. We meet halfway. Sometimes we meet at the Nidloys. She goes and sees her mum and other gran in Welshpool, and we meet in Llanidloes. And I don't like the thought of her driving in bad weather all the way here from Shrewsbury. And of course, they get the floods in between there, but there we are. But she does come. So, but Christmas isn't the same.
I think social media has been wonderful in a lot of cases with this. There's 6 of us that are friends, 6 ladies. We call ourselves the girls, and I'm not quite the youngest, but it's. But there's 6 of. I mean, we've got a WhatsApp group, and it's lovely, and we Zoom or we're Zooming once a week, but now it's freer and we don't feel the need. But I've got a friend in Amsterdam who used to live in Rheda, and our mothers were very great friends, and her mother died a few years ago as well. So we WhatsApp as well, which is something that, well, you just couldn't do years ago, could you? I mean, even writing a letter took months to arrive.
Yeah, we did a lot of, like everyone else, a lot of Zoom calls and a lot of family quizzes. We're actually lucky enough to have a quiz master in the family. One of Stella's nephews actually writes quizzes for television shows, newspapers, and he's got a real art to it. So we've had some very creative Zoom quizzes, which has been real fun.
But you've done quite a few Zoom quizzes and things, haven't you?
Yeah, we've been doing over the whole of the last year. We've been doing regular Zoom catch-ups, quizzes. We're now doing interdepartmental catch-ups because, you know, I haven't seen anyone from the other teams for at least a year, really, properly. So it's been quite nice. It's kind of kept us going.
But we always, quizzes, they were the best thing. Charades and quizzes, that's what our lot like. They still do. They quiz on Zoom now. But we all used to do it together in the room now.
So my children came up with the idea of having a Zoom meeting in the afternoon, which was what we did do. And I have to say, it was rather lovely. It was almost just like having them all there in the room with me. And, you know, we were able to just chat away. And in fact, my eldest daughter, now she's completely different to me. She absolutely loves Christmas and she sort of goes all out. She lives in a converted church, so she's got very high ceilings in her rooms, and she has like a 12-foot Christmas tree in her house. And she also invites the whole of her friend group. So she usually has about 40 people in her house on Christmas Eve, sing carols underneath this huge Christmas tree, you know. So of course, none of that was able to happen.
Slightly more fortunate. My son gave me half an hour's notice. He was picking up something from West Wales from London and was going to drive back through Abergavenny. So I grabbed his Christmas present and we drove down to Waitrose car park because we do have class. And I put a plastic mat on back to front so that I could hug him. And we gave him his Christmas present there. So that was quite nice. But I did see, I don't know what it was on television last night, but I remember thinking, I just feel like I've missed Christmas this year. It was enjoyable, you know, don't get me wrong, I wasn't miserable on the day, but it was very different.
You know, so it's funny to think back, you know, before social distancing, we took it all for granted, you know.
I've got a very big family in Dorset. So our Christmas tradition in Dorset was that the whole family would get together. I've got about 20 cousins, first cousins. So we'd all get together and have just a Christmas party when we would endorse it. But obviously this year we wasn't able to travel, and so we actually had it via Zoom. So we played a really silly Christmas game. So yeah.
I didn't mind being on my own at Christmas. I just thought there were other people even worse than me, because at least I had family that were knowing where I was and bothering about me, whereas some people, I hadn't got anybody, full stop. That's it.
But the only difference was the missing, obviously my mum and dad on the day. They would have joined us for lunch, and yeah, obviously we were just remembering everybody else as well, because you know we felt very lucky to be safe and well and hadn't lost any loved ones. So obviously with Jessie, in her job, you know, she's seen a lot this year, and there would have been a lot of people in a lot worse situations. So yeah, it's remembering everybody else, isn't it, as well?
So Christmas, tradition-wise, things have kind of just, you know, with like family members passing on, it's kind of become less and less, a smaller and smaller family unit. But to me that feels, you know, that feels almost more special because we still have each other. So it's, you know, it is that kind of core family, core family thing that we missed out on.
And we do usually go up and see Pete's sister and brother-in-law and family. We usually meet up with them. They've got quite a big family. We usually meet up with them at least once for a meal. Yeah. This year we dropped off the presents and ran, and Ellen didn't see them at all.
I haven't seen them since. No, I haven't seen them in over a year now. It's very weird when you've got such a sort of lovely family and a tight-knit family. It is weird not to see them, especially when, you know, like maybe health isn't so good with some of them, and they've got kids that you want to see grow up, and yeah, so it's quite strange.
My mother always had this big party. My grandfather would be on the piano. He could play the piano like the pub pianist, you know, da 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 da, clatter clatter, and he could do any song. You just sing a pop song, and he could translate it onto the piano. We used to have good fun. And my mother and her sisters thought they were the Andrew sisters. They used to sing. And my grandmother could dance, and she'd done music hall when she was younger, and she used to do a Knees Up Mother Brown for us. That was very good. They were fun. The old Christmases were fun because you didn't have there was television, but you didn't have it on or anything like that. Radio was more likely, but yeah. So those were lovely Christmases. They're the ones you remember, your childhood ones.
We've always had a tradition. It's my sister's birthday on Christmas Day, so we're also celebrating her birthday. So the tradition is always that it's her birthday in the morning, and then we've always had Christmas. We've always had our Christmas lunch quite late, and then we always open presents after lunch because then it's Christmas. So that my sister always has her presents in. It's very different now. She's over 70, but well, you know, that's like something that's hung on since when we were kids, and she would sort of have her Christmas morning.
Whichever day Christmas fell on, whichever day of the week, the morning we go to church. You know, that's how it was. We go to church in the morning, have a little sing along at church. I used to sing in the choir as a child. That's where I got my singing experience from, going to church. And we home, have something to eat, open our little presents if we've got any presents, and myself and my cousins will go out to play. And before you know it, it was time to go back to the evening service again. You know, that was probably for about an hour maybe, and then we'd get home, have a little snack, and then probably more playing, but probably by this time it was getting dark anyway. And then before long it was time to go to bed, you know, and That's how Christmas was for me in Jamaica. Now for my husband, it was slightly different because he's from the city. Because city people have, they've got access to all sorts of things. We haven't in the country. We're not that lucky. So Christmas for Raj, on Christmas Eve, the adults and the children would go to the town area, and they'd go to, there'll be a gathering. They call it like a grand market evening, where people gather, eat and drink, and they play music, and the kids would have their balloons and their firecrackers and things like that, and have a jolly good evening out, buying presents because shops were open. And then they'll be, by 12 o'clock, that's it now, it's finished. It was Christmas morning, 12 o'clock, so they'll be getting ready to go home. About 12, 1 o'clock, they'll be on the bus to go home. Although Raj and his family didn't live too far away, they still use a bus, because it was too far to walk. Those who could walk, walked, and those who could, they got on the bus.
I remember when I was about 5-ish, I think, my father had been quite poorly, and my mother was from Stoke-on-Trent, and we went up to stay with Mum's sister. My cousin Jeff is a few years older than me, and I can remember that for some reason, I don't know, we were sleeping top to tail in the bed, and we were so excited because Father Christmas had been, so we opened all our presents. And I remember having a Welsh doll in that. One of those hideous ones, with the hairs all stuck on the head and the funny little felt hat. And Mum coming in and saying it was only 12:30. We thought we'd been asleep for hours. Yeah.
We ran the Ellen Valley Hotel for 8 years. So we've got quite a few Christmases there. The first Christmas, our children were we had 2 couples running it, 5 children between the ages of 2 and 9. And we were open for Christmas. And so we had a very strange mixture of people, from Australians to local people we didn't open actually for Christmas lunch to the public. It was to the people that were staying in the hotel. We had residents. And
So
it was
tell me, what sort of person would come to Ellen Valley for Christmas?
It was definitely a group of Australian women who were I think there were 4 Australian women who were quite young.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah, who were kind of wanted a party really, and then most other people were quite old, and it was it was strange. I mean, it was kind of nice in its own way. We got my sister and friends to come and help serve, so that we weren't bringing in staff. So we kind of did it between ourselves. But it was very difficult to tell the children that they couldn't have Christmas Day. They didn't get that at all, and we said no, we'll have Christmas Day tomorrow when it's Boxing Day. But then we actually discovered the next day that there was still lots to do. We still had to look after these people. We couldn't just abandon them, on Boxing Day. We thought they'd all go off for a walk or something, but they didn't all. So basically the kids never had Christmas that year. By the time the guests went, and we were revving up for New Year. So so by the following year we decided, let's close for Christmas. So that was our one time when we closed the hotel to Christmas Day, and we actually all moved into the hotel. So we all had Christmas, all the kids running around together. So we had Christmas in the hotel with our guests. So that became a tradition then.
Living on a farm, every day is the same day, including Christmas Day. So it was a case of going through the usual, getting up and exchanging a few little presents. We still do stockings and things like that. So we had a few exchange of presents, and then outside for feeding the animals. And then I did cook a Christmas dinner, and the difference being, normally I would have my mum and dad with us, and our daughter as well, Jessie. And so this Christmas my mum and dad were shielding in the home in Raider. They cooked their own Christmas lunch, which they wanted to do, but Stephen's mum, who lives just, or Stella's mum just lives down near to the farm. She did come up for a couple of hours and ate Christmas dinner with us, which was really nice because we hadn't been mixing or in and out very much. We kept our distance and we were very careful.
No, I never have a Christmas stocking. I only do it for the children, and as they weren't there, and they do kind of still insist on it now, which is nice.
Do with the children, because they've had their stockings and they still have their stockings, even though they're 33 or 38. And then, yes, I think when they were younger, if they did start getting impatient, we would let them have the odd present, because obviously they will always have more than us anyway. So by the time we actually do the rest of the presents, we will go about the same. Though, well, okay, again, that's also something I've inherited from my mum. There'd always be something to wear, something to eat, something to play with, something to read, and some sort of a fluffy toy, you know, soft toy, something to cuddle. That's it, something to cuddle. So again, we sort of always carried that on, that I try and make sure there's something. I mean, Jen, but it will always be the normal sort of chocolate money and an orange. And then now they're older, very much sort of socks and pants and
Yeah.
you know, things they need really, shampoo and stuff. There's less sort of and then the odd sort of frippery, I suppose. Yeah. But they,
I think if I had my way, that the stockings would have stopped a while ago. I mean, 33, God's sake.
but the argument we've always had is that Georgia always says, well, I'm 5 years younger than Simon, so it's not fair if we stop having stockings, I'm still owed 5 years. And then Simon says, yeah, but that's not fair because she has a stocking and I don't. So
no, and in fact, my children put up pillowcases in the expectation that Father Christmas would be far more generous than he was willing to be. And the only time we had proper stockings was when my daughter worked for like a t-shirt embroidery firm in Llandrindod Wells, and she had to make 10,000 Christmas stockings for some catalogue. So she made us all little velvet stockings, which we then had to hang up, and which nothing useful would ever fit in, probably not even an orange. But as a child, we never had anything like that.
As a child, we would always have Christmas stockings. But they were, I presume, my dad's long knee-length woolly socks. You know, they were the biggest socks that we could find, but they were actual socks. And like you say, they were always, you know, mainly oranges, satsumas, tangerines, whatever you want to call them, and a selection of nuts. And then there might be something in there like a pencil or a rubber or a pencil sharpener, or just, you know, tiny little things really. But our main presents were usually something that my mum had made, or she would contribute to it in some way. So for instance, I'm the oldest of 5 children, and there were 3 girls and 2 boys. So the girls would always have a doll when they were young, a new doll. And my mum would make outfits for the dolls so that they were all similar but different. She would also make our own clothes as well, and we were always dressed similar but different.
I made them Christmas stockings, which they still have. And my oldest daughter is 45, and she still got her stocking. I think she's given it to her middle daughter.
Christmas is here is different than Christmas in Jamaica as a child. Obviously, as a child, you see things differently anyway than an adult, but it's definitely different. I mean, kids here, they get whatever they want. I mean, in Jamaica as a child, you just have to make do with what you get, and that's it.
Well, he was saying about the presents being unwrapped as well. It was, I suppose, a lot of them in the household back in the day. There wasn't the expense that there is now. It was a lot more be grateful for what you're given, and appreciate things in life and appreciate all being together as well. So yeah.
Because the presents all fitted in your father's Wellington sock and the pillowcase. I mean, now you have a heap in the corner of the room, and it's that many batteries and cardboard boxes, and yeah, always in the bottom. Father Christmas used to put an orange, because I don't think we didn't have satsumas then, so we'd have nuts and orange and an orange, and then little presents, and then the pillowcase as well. I always had an annual.
Yes.
Whatever it was, and they always crinkled, and you'd always awake early waiting for these parcels. And then Father Christmas had been, and you can't remember him coming, you know, and it's that sort of, yeah.
Yes, a pencil maybe, an exercise book, and if I was lucky, I would get some underwear, and that's it. You know, we used to get lots to eat, you know, no problem there, because we used to grow our own stuff, you know, our own vegetables, our own fruit, so, you know, things like that. You know, we just go and pick and eat and what have you. But as Christmas, we didn't celebrate Christmas. You know, we just spend most of Christmas Day in Jamaica in church. That's what we did, and that's how it was. You know, you get up in the morning, you go to church, come back home, have something to eat, have a little play as a child, and then you go to the evening service, and that's how it was.
Yeah, so my family, it was my parents. My mother was English and my father was Polish. And my father came here as a displaced person, was a technical term, after the war in 1948. And he then was sort of forced to decide, really, that he was going to stay in Britain for the rest of his life. And so for the next 10 years, he didn't see his mother. His father had died in the war. And so he had to assimilate himself into the British way of life. So we had he met my mother at the place where he was living in Staffordshire, and they got married, and I'm the oldest of their children. And I think that he had to make the decision to try and forget about his Polish traditions and culture and everything, and to assimilate him into British life. And so, although we were given Polish names, we learned to speak a bit of the Polish language, we didn't really embrace the whole Polish tradition and everything. We just tried to do the British thing. And so what I remember of my childhood Christmases were that we didn't do any of the Polish tradition. Now, the Polish tradition is that the most important day almost is Christmas Eve, not Christmas Day itself. So, and also the whole Father Christmas, St. Nicholas thing isn't connected to Christmas Day, but it's connected to St. Nicholas Day, which is on the 6th of December. And so on St. Nicholas Day, you get some presents that are from St. Nicholas, but the presents that you get at Christmas are, depending on where you live, they're either from the little baby, which is Jesus, or they're from the angel, or they're from the third one, which will come back to me in a minute. So they're not actually connected with Father Christmas, which is interesting. So on Christmas Eve is when you put up your decorations, and your decorations then stay up maybe until the end of February, just as long as they last, really, because people like to have some decorations in the house. But the decorations are very simple. They're just like branches of pine trees and then decorated with like paper cutouts and things like that traditionally. Although, you know, Poland has obviously become much more commercialized as time's gone on, and they now have the usual gaudy Christmas decorations and Christmas trees and everything. But Christmas trees themselves, I think, up until this century, were what the rich people had, but you know, but most people, they just put a few branches up and things like that. So you put those up on Christmas Eve, and you would also clean the house, make it neat and tidy, because it was when the family all got together for a meal in the evening. And so there are lots of traditions that come from the old Slavic religion, pre-Christian thing, that were carried over, the same as a lot of traditions, you know, in this country are also Celtic or whatever. And one of the things was that if you didn't clean your house on that day, then that's what it would stay like for the rest of the year.
I bought Christmas decorations for the first time when I realized I wasn't coming home, because usually at home we have
Shed loads.
a lot, which is lovely. Lots of like nice kitsch, shiny things, and yeah. So I bought Christmas decorations for the first time. It felt very weird.
Yeah, well,
Mine are
kids
much more
kids.
subtle and tasteful. Not brought you up right. No.
So
Yeah, and that's all family circumstances, isn't it? And when the children were small, we used to have a real Christmas tree and make a lot about going to get it. And we always seemed to live in small houses. So then it was always a scrum where you were going to put it and which corner it was going to go in and things like that. Because we lived in, I've lived in all sorts of places. I remember in Norfolk when we were there, and there was sort of an odd shaped bit at the bottom of the stairs, and we always used to put the Christmas tree on there, and then the children would always play with it as they were going up and down the stairs. And then of course you have all the pine needles going everywhere. And when you used to let them, obviously they used to, I'd put the lights on and the tinsel, and then they put everything else on. And sometimes it looked like a real dog's dinner, but it was the children's tree. And we always all have the paper plates and the robin made out of a toilet roll middle and a ball of cotton wool, don't we?
And the only other thing that has survived are these little figures. I think these are a European tradition, and they're called santons. They come from the south of France because my mum was French. So she didn't really celebrate Christmas. And I think that kind of gave permission for my dad to just let it slip, because he didn't like any of those sorts of family. He was very much not into family celebrations or anything like that. So our Christmas really was very quiet.
And it's the same thing. Go through the address. I think most people must do it. Go through your address book, find out who's still alive, and that's terrible. Or their family is getting smaller. I'm still sending Christmas cards to my mother's friends. Mum died 4 years ago, and so I've got Mum's address book. And because I live in what was Mum's house, Mum and this family house, I still get all the Christmas cards here. And it's lovely because I just write to them and sending letters, and I put it off every year. And I think in November, I think, right, I'll do my Christmas cards early. Never do. First week in December, I do them, and it's such a relief when they're done. But I only send about, I don't know, about 60 or something.
I remember now, like last year, obviously my son made Christmas cards you know, for the family, including myself, you know, in school. And it was great because it's the first Christmas card that I got from him that he actually had writing in it, like, you know, to mummy kind of thing, love, you know, that kind of stuff. And then he drew a picture of Santa and reindeer, you know, like stick figures. But, you know, that's definitely very, very memorable. It's on my altar, the Christmas card that he gave me. So yeah, last Christmas was lovely. Very nice.
We send lots of Christmas cards, and we send them because it might be the only time in a year that we contact someone. We might still like them, we might still want to include them, but we don't regularly get in contact with them. And in some cases, when we were both working, it was a bit like you would send a more personal message to someone you were working with or were going to work with. And I have embraced the Christmas letter because then it gives people, I know they're really reviled, but it actually tells people what you've done in a year. You don't have to write the same thing in a small format on one card. And I really love getting them. I love getting Christmas letters because it tells me what people have done in the year that I might not have seen. And they're very personal to, you know, you can see the style. You get the people who always start the letter with all the bits of them that have dropped off, and then all the bits of people that they know who've died. And there is this, I love that person's letter because I can anticipate don't be the roll call of doom. But also it keeps me in touch with people who had children the same age of mine, so I know what the children have got up to. So from an extended family point of view, it's good. And I also really enjoy writing them. And this year I've actually kept, well, I usually keep the letters anyway, but I've kept the letters this year because I thought a lot of them do deal with Christmas and they have dealt with what's happened over the past year. And I thought as an archive, you know, it's a little snapshot of how people spent a year.
Christmas is a very special time of year, you know. I think it's kind of, South Wales was kind of post-nonconformist, you know, but the older generation still, especially, saw the faith side of Christmas as important. And yeah, I think coming up to Raider, you know, it's a big family occasion, and people love their singing here as they did in South Wales. And of course, carols is a big part of Christmas worship and celebration. So yeah, they love their carol singing, and yeah.
I mean, there's something to be said about, like, you know, living with Catholic people around Christmas time. I must say, maybe not just Catholic, but, you know, like Christian people, like carol singing is the same. You know, I do love that about the church. You know, the singing and the, you know, getting together, celebration side, because I grew up with praying as well, because I grew up with religious family. So, you know, based in Eastern philosophy, is not, you know, Christian, but yeah. So I guess I really enjoyed that when I lived with Christian people. Yeah, and I still do enjoy going to the church, and then if I go on holiday or something, I always, you know, find myself in a church. So that, yeah, that's that.
People would go to midnight mass, which was always known as the Pasternak, the shepherd's mass, which I think is, you know, to do with the shepherds being told that there was baby Jesus had been born. And also another tradition is that people would go out to the stable, because at that magical time of midnight on Christmas Eve, there was a tradition that animals could talk. And so if they'd got anything that they wanted to tell you, that was the time that they would let you know. But the tradition also says that if you did actually go out to the stable and you did hear an animal talking to you, then you would die that year.
I'd like to say that we had that tradition as well, that as a British tradition. So I've heard that if you go out at midnight to the stable, you will hear the, but the one that I knew was that the devil would come if you heard them talk. So yeah, that's interesting. That's a real crossover, isn't it? From a European to a British tradition together.
So you would clean the house and you would then prepare a 12-course meal, which would be served to all the members of the family in the evening. And this meal wouldn't have any meat involved, because the meat is what you would eat on Christmas Day. But for this special meal, you would have 12 courses that were based on vegetables, on fruit, on grains, on the things that you had been able to preserve, I suppose, originally, you know, throughout the year. And you would then concoct them into this meal. And each course represented a month of the year. So again, in order to have a good year the next year, you had to eat every one of these courses so that your whole year would be fruitful or whatever. So you would actually make sure that you had just very small portions, you know, it wasn't that it was like a huge feast. Every year we would get sent these wafers, and this is the first course that you would have of your meal. So they're made like, it's almost like Holy Communion type wafer made out of like rice paper. And it's the first thing that you'd have when you all gathered in a house. You would break off a piece and give it to your guest, and they would have one similar, and they would break off a piece and give it to you. So that's this sharing, this breaking of bread that was the beginning of the feast.
But we're not Christians, so my family isn't. My parents were, my grandparents who I lived with weren't. But one of my aunties is Christian. She's Catholic, I think. So she used to always bake us a cake. I don't know whether because she was Christian or just because she was a good baker. I'm not quite sure. But she used to always bring us a Christmas log, you know, Yule log, you know, Christmas. And so we'll typically have like a Western kind of party food on Christmas Day. But it wasn't a religious thing. It was just for the sake of partying, really. And so, yeah, so we had some years after my oldest sister started working at KFC. I think we got a, you know, KFC Christmas bucket. I don't know if that's the proper product name, but so that was quite nice. But yeah, my family tradition was purely just ours. I don't think it's typically Japanese or anything like that. Was just have a Western meal, celebrate, which means typically something like, chicken, like fried chicken or something with bread, salad, something like that. I can't remember. It wasn't a roast. It wasn't a roast. I don't think my mum ever cooked a roast meal, like not like a British roast.
Everybody brings something, so it was always just a big roast dinner. So one group would bring roast potatoes, one group would bring pudding, one group would bring meat. With your family, they would pass the parcel and all sorts of games for the kids. So Jen's mum would do all the organising, and you'd all be allocated a job, and you had to turn up at the St John Ambulance Hall at a certain time because there was nowhere big enough to fit them all in. You were a big family. Yeah.
Probably had more than usual. You know, there was a variety of meats and fish, chicken, beef, variety of vegetables. As I said earlier, we grew our own vegetables. We just had more of it, you know, and then you could help yourself. You could either have a bit of each or just stick to one if you like chicken, you know, and that's all the family getting together for Christmas. You know, I had lots of cousins, so it would be me, my cousins, my aunt, my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my grandmother, you know, that's how it was. Family would get together and we'd all get in the big dining room, because we used to have a special dining room, you know, and you know, just eat to our heart's content, as they say. Yeah.
We actually don't. We don't have turkey actually.
No, we
Because-
don't have.
Partly because
Well,
me and Rick are vegetarians, so there's only 4 other adults then, so turkey's too big, and none of them really like turkey. So we usually have we usually do a survey. What does everyone want this year? It's usually beef or lamb, or sometimes it has been a chicken. It has been a duck or a goose, chicken sometimes, and
Yeah.
a duck, I think.
it's varied.
It
Yeah.
does vary. Yeah, so there's no one meat that we have every year.
Well, yeah, I guess, yeah, that's the tradition. Yeah, there's also usually I bake like mince pies, yeah, and things like that. But yeah, that's about it really.
Us schools in the surgery, because we used to go out as a group, receptionists and practice nurses, practice manager, and we go and have a few drinks, whichever on our last working day, and then go home. So that was nice. And of course, patients are very generous, and we'd get loads of presents brought to us, loads of chocolates and biscuits, certainly not good for the waistline. And we used to share them, which was lovely.
See, that's a lovely local Christmas tradition there, really.
It is, and they're still doing it now. And we have people who bring in. I know that now that they have people who bring in cakes and baking and things like that. And we used to have a market stall, and they used to bring us boxes of fruit.
Oh.
So we'd have crates of apples and pears and satsumas and sprouts. We'd have sacks of sprouts, which was quite funny, but it was, everybody was just so thoughtful and so kind.
I mean, singing and dancing, I think, for me, and my husband's always taking the mickey, you know, you put the music on and that's it, I'm off. You know, you can't stop me, I'm off. And he's always taking the mickey. Turn that music off and go do something else apart from dancing. Well, I can't help it. It's just the way I am.
No staff Christmas party either. That's something that there's something that usually happens in one form or another. We sort of mark the end of, especially as I work in the tourism industry, so we get very, 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 very busy parts of the year. So it's quite nice to sort of have a little unwind and celebrate with your colleagues. So that didn't happen this year either.
Yeah.
So yeah, bit of a strange one.
Because I am a member of the WI, and I happen to be the treasurer at the moment. We were always very active, but not having a meeting place, and that was sort of got rid of one Christmas party, as it were, which was very disappointing because, I mean, that was so lovely. Also a member of the Reda choir, Voices in Unity, and that's been going for 14, 15 years. So missed that social gathering. And town council. We usually had a drink together at Christmas, but it was nothing. It was really very much a damp squib. And not singing around the clock either. In fact, I can't remember what we did last Christmas.
Yes, we always used to go Christmas Day. After dinner, we'd go for a nice long walk when we were here for Christmas dinner. And then the singing around the clock, we always did that, but of course that's always a couple of days before Christmas. And excuse me, yeah, I always enjoyed that. I never miss singing at the clock. The last year or two I have, because I haven't been in full health myself to stand at the clock in the cold.
Yeah.
I
Not
can't
much
sing
music
anymore,
playing.
it's all gone. But not that I was ever good at singing before, but I did used to try. I can't now.
Oh.
So no, but it was fun at the clock, and everybody used to come there. Then it gradually started to get smaller, not so many people. But you know, we used to arrange to meet friends there. So I'll be there. I'll see you, and you said, "Hey, come on over here," you know. And you used to get, I can remember having like some hot punch. We had hot punch at it sometimes.
I think with the Christmas lights, they look really lovely this year, and Welsh Water as well. The Ellen Estate donate 2 Christmas trees to Rhayader and to Cymdaither, and so they look really good this year again. And I think the Rhayader Christmas tree, I think, is in its 62nd year, I think, or 61st year of having a tree from the Ellen Estate. So yeah, so they were able to do that, which was really lovely, and to be able to help with that was a privilege. So yeah, I was glad that Rhayader was able to at least have their Christmas tree up and their lights on.
Especially when I was much smaller, regarding the sort of town Christmas tree, for a number of years I would go into the Ellen Valley with my dad and, you know, a group of kind of, there were, you know, a few of us children around, but then the adults would go and get the Christmas tree and we'd tag along, and it was always really fun, like a proper adventure when you're a kid, being sort of taken up in a Land Rover to the middle of nowhere to get a tree and all the stuff that goes with that. So that was quite a nice sort of, yeah, it was quite a nice thing to do as well.
And Emrys has been involved with the Christmas tree since it's first started. He does a lot of sorting the lights out. So I always seem to have been involved with it in that way.
There's always been a bit of classic rivalry between the Cymdaither and the Rhayader trees. Yeah, and they kind of, you know, get the tree, bring it back, and then spend the rest of the day and evening in the pub, which wouldn't necessarily be what I would do, but, you know, we'd go in for a bowl of like hot, delicious cowl, yeah, as kids, and then, you know, we'd be packed off home, and the rest of the tree fellas would then spend the rest of the day in the pub.
My husband, when we came here, started to help the men in Cymdaither to bring the Cymdaither Christmas tree down. And in the first, probably the third Christmas that we were here, I hadn't really clocked what this tradition involved. And so he went off to do the Christmas tree, and I thought, great, he'll be back in time to read my daughter a Christmas story. And he didn't come back for quite a long time, and I was getting really cross because she was waiting for her story. And eventually he got back, and it became apparent that he had woven his way from side to side up the lane and had got back and was quite the worse for wear, which was unusual for him. But anyway, he manfully went upstairs and he lay down to read the story. And my daughter appeared sometime later saying, "Daddy's fallen asleep and he's snoring on the bed." And I never asked him to do that again, because I realized that the Christmas tree was a very small part of the day, and going to the pub afterwards was a very big part of the day, and that much beer was taken. And the only other thing I know about Christmas tree day, I did do it once and then thought, nah, was that you can take your children. So he would take the children off, and I would have a whole morning in bed until they got back. So those are my experiences of the Christmas tree.
Because we have both trees, don't we? We have the Rhayader tree and the Cymdaither tree. So we, you know, we in 19 we sang by the tree in Cymdaither, and they have the brazier going, and they asked me to lead that, which is nice. And a couple of my parishioners helped with the Rhayader tree, playing the musical the keyboard, and that. So they're both quite, you know, quite an event. And
I think so.
we couldn't do anything like that this year.
And then yeah, people would carol around it. It's always kind of nice to drive past and see, and it's always exciting when the Reda tree goes up as well. And you know, they have the crib underneath, and yeah, it's just one of those things that's just year on year is always there and always a nice thing to see. Just a year marker, I suppose.
Because I used to sing in, well, I still sing in choirs, but we don't tend to sing carols anymore, and I miss that. So yeah, I will go into one or either of them, and they're nice, you know, except when it rains. They're very nice events, and surprisingly large number of people go. And it's like, I mean, there's
The Christmas tree.
The Christmas tree is the big sort of local event, which is the Christmas tree that goes to Cwmdailen, the Christmas tree that goes to Reda, and all going up sort of 2 or 3 weeks before Christmas and collecting the tree and bringing it down. That's all a big local tradition, which is great.
Yeah, so I suppose our traditions would be not so much the actual Christmas tree carol singing. We're a big young farmer family, so in the past the young farmers go carol singing around houses, friends and supporters of the club. So that's been a tradition leading up to the Christmas day. So Jessie and Lewis would have joined in with the young farmers and would have gone round doing that, and back in myself as well when I was a young farmer many years ago. So carol singing that way, and also on Christmas Eve, the Nant Gwyllt Christmas service, which is at 6 o'clock. So that's been a tradition with us, that on Christmas Eve we go up to Nant Gwyllt Church in the Allen Valley and take part in the service there.
But yeah, the Christmas play,
that seemed to take over the whole school for about 6 weeks before Christmas. And parents would be making costumes, and
I do remember that being quite exciting, actually.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Because it was always late at night, I think, as well, when we'd be allowed to kind of, well, probably it wasn't late, but it was dark.
It was late for a school day.
Late for a school day. So you'd be in school in a costume, which was always an unusual thing to do.
Was this in a school or in a chapel?
No, this would have been in Bryntyrion Primary School.
It was always good fun to watch, because it was a mixture of laughing and crying. So it was like,
what, crying in despair?
No, it was just kind of, it was just quite moving, because the little tiny ones always looked quite sweet, and it was unintentionally funny quite a lot of the time. Yeah. Well, it was a big production, wasn't it? They worked really hard on it. Yeah.
It was really odd because you could the Christmas lights were still on in Reda, but obviously they didn't have any carols singing around the clock, or and we wasn't able to have any events at the visitor centre like we've had before, where we've had the Reda male voice choir come and sing, and we've had Father Christmas in years before, and we wasn't able to hold any of those events this year. So it was very strange.
It's odd because we'd been working at home so much, we just simply hadn't been out. Normally when I'd be coming back from the office, it'd be dark, so I'd see the Christmas lights every time I come home. And it surprised me the one time I did get to go out on site and look at something, and I come back in the dark to actually see some of the Christmas lights, because I don't go anywhere. I work in the spare bedroom. It's very bizarre at the moment.
I have a couple of memories. I mean, one recent one is my son's big enough now to kind of like appreciate, you know, the Christmas lights and I guess the nativity scene that the town of Reda displays at the clock tower with the Christmas tree. So last year, just after Christmas, I think it was, I took him like for a drive after dark, and that was great. That was really, really good. I don't think we've ever taken him for the Christmas lights. So that was lovely. Another one I remember was from 3 years ago. So my neighbor in Nantmo has just moved to the nursing home in Reda, And yeah, I guess, I mean, he's bless him, he passed on now, but he was just there for Christmas, and he was well that day, but we, like the bunch of us in the neighborhood in Nantmo, went to go and sing a carol for him, and all the other residents of the nursing home. That was really nice. Oh gosh, how many years ago was that? I thought it was 3 years ago. Yeah, I think it was 3 years ago. Ngaku was a baby, my son. So yeah, that was really, really nice actually. And our neighbor friend was really good that day, like like lucid. So it was it was really memorable. That I remember that.
And then also we have an elderly neighbour that lives quite close by. She's called Pat. She's a family friend, and we pop in and out, and Stella looks after her a little bit if she needs anything doing. And she lost her husband Peter this year, who we were very fond of, and so we offered to cook her Christmas dinner. She was going to come and join us before it got a little bit worse with the infection rate and everything, and obviously the lockdown. So so she decided to stay at home in her bungalow on her own, but we cooked a Christmas dinner up and plated it all up, full works with Christmas pudding and cracker and all the trimmings. And before we ate our Christmas dinner, we went down and delivered that to Pat and said Happy Christmas to her on the doorstep. So yeah, it was nice to see her. Although she wasn't able to join us, we did take her lunch.
But I decided to retire early because nursing wasn't the same as it was when I trained. It was getting to be too much paperwork, and that wasn't what I was trained for. So I decided to retire early. And now I'm concentrating on volunteering and helping people in the local community. Yes, I mean, the Christmases, I've been volunteering at Bringowie now for well over 10 years, on and off. And every Christmas morning, it's the same routine. Up a state, have my breakfast in bed, get up for about 10, well, leave home for about 10 to go to Bringowie, get there, help with the drinks, and we'll have a little sing-along, Christmassy songs, and then prepare them, get them ready for their lunch about 12. And then, they also have like a variety. I think they had a choice of 2. Sometimes, turkey. If there's usually a couple of vegetarians who don't have turkey, so they'll have vegetarian. But there's usually turkey or chicken, and then the vegetarians will have their vegetarian stuff. And they'll sit and eat and have a glass of wine. Oh. And of course, I wouldn't have a glass of wine with them because I'd have to drive home afterwards. And, we just have a little bit of jolliness, and then they go back to the lounge. The ones who can't can't feed themselves, I'll help them. And by this time, 1 o'clock-ish, stream of visitors will start to come in then, relatives and visitors. And by then it's the time for me to leave. And then by the time I get home, my dinner will be ready. Right. I've got my husband well trained.
We did doorstep the neighbours. We went round with a bottle of Prosecco to the neighbours in our street and stood on the doorstep and had a glass of wine with them, which was actually quite good fun. Because I say normally we have this sort of Christmas morning tradition when we go up to a friend's house who lives up the hill, and all the neighbours call in and we have a nice social in the morning, get drunk, drink too much Prosecco, and then come back and cook Christmas dinner. But
and I often do, because I do go to Bringowie otherwise, other day, not just Christmas Day. I go sometimes twice a week to take people out who want to just go out. Sometimes there's a gentleman I take out regularly, and we go for a coffee because he likes walking, and take him walking. And we usually have a sing-along on some days, get them to move in their chairs like I'm moving now. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a big difference. It's a big difference.
And of course, I went to work, 'cause I was a telephonist, and I worked Boxing Day, I think it was. So I went to work in the morning for Boxing Day. We went on to my grandmother's.
Mhm.
We got home. No, it was Christmas Day. I'd worked. Boxing Day, the snow came, and I didn't have any boots, only Wellingtons, and I wasn't going to go to work in Wellingtons. So I had to meet this minivan, I was told. Minivans were all the thing then, and it was the post office one, or what you'd say BT now. And walked up the slope onto the main road, ready to meet it. And what came was a great big cable lorry. It used to lay the cables and the big poles. And he said, "Can you get up here?" And I looked. "I don't know," I said, and I had a straight skirt on and high heels. And I had to struggle up there, and I got in there, and it was blinking freezing cold, and I was stuck like this. Luckily it was the Swagger coats were in there, and I could wrap the coat right around me.
I've got a tray of tea, I've got a pot, so I can get 3 cups out of it, mugs out of it.
Yeah, thanks for asking, and sorry Stella couldn't join us, but thanks very much indeed. Take care both.
Right, so I think that's all I've got to tell you, really.
Yeah, Ryder is a lovely community, isn't it? Like everybody seems really lovely, and what's the word? Community spirited. Yeah, I feel really grateful actually to be here. Well, in Nantumo, but close enough. Bye, and I'll say Merry Christmas in Japanese. Merry Christmas.